I feel like boundaries have such a negative connotation, but I see them as a really positive thing because that's where you are setting expectations for your life, for yourself, for other people, and that's where you're creating spaces in your life to feel certain things or be certain things. When I go to school, that's my space to be the teacher. When I'm at home, that's my space to be a member of my family. When I'm out of the house on my walk, that's my space to be me. And giving yourself those spaces in your life creates balance.
Hello, hello. Okay, we've got someone really special today. Her name is Puja Ramaswamy. She's the choir director at Lakeview High School here in Chicago. She was awarded the Golden Apple Award for Excellence in Teaching. She loves to read. You won't be able to see her face light up, but you'll hear her voice light up in this episode. She's just awesome. We talk about navigating boundaries in the workplace, particularly when you are in a relationship where the power is different, including talking about how to live within your values while striving for that career excellence. It's not easy. She is such a good example of someone who does it anyway. I can't wait for you to meet her. I'm Emily Drake, and this is Who's Missing. I know we're here to talk about, I could talk to you about anything is how it feels, but we're here to talk about navigating boundaries. And I want to let listeners know how I know you. I'm meeting you for the first time face to face. We've had a phone conversation, but it comes from a place of deep love that an individual we both know has for you, Sruthi Swaminathan, who was on season 1 of Who's Missing. Go back and listen to her episode. It was amazing.
I listened to it. Yeah, she's amazing. My gosh. She's so good.
Oh, right?
And she's so easy to talk to.
So easy to talk to. We're talking today for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is your profession and the purpose by which you work being really important, I think, as a person to have around the table at gatherings in your friends group, a teacher. You have many identities, though. Do you want to tell us a little bit about some of them?
Oh my gosh. I think we just juggle so many different personas all the time.
I know.
And that's so hard to do. Yes, I'm a teacher. Yeah. I'm also a spouse. I'm a mother. I'm a sister. I'm a daughter. I'm a friend. I play all these different roles. And we talked about boundaries a little bit, and it's really hard to figure out, well, where do I set the boundary for these different personas?
Yeah.
And I think the biggest boundary is, where do I set the boundary for myself? Because you can be all of these people, but when do you get to be just you?
I'm going to ask you the same question. When do you get to be just you? What does it require for Puja to be Puja? What do you need to be you?
I love being around people. I'm around people all the time for my job, at home. But to be me, I kind of just need to be alone. And I'm fine with that solitude. I think we all kind of just need some quiet space in our lives to really reflect and just be and not have to be anything, just be. And so that time for me is in the mornings and the evenings where I get that little piece of solitude.
Mm-hmm. How did you spend your me time today? Let's just get practical about it.
Yeah.
Did you have any, first of all?
I did, yes.
Okay, good. I didn't want to assume that the morning had its moment. Okay.
So I'm a stickler for exercising. I think it's so important just because it elevates your mood. It makes you feel good. Your body just needs it, to just kind of regulate. And so this morning I went to my class at 6 a.m. and exercised for 45 minutes. And that was my me time. Yeah, there were people around, but I wasn't talking to anybody. I was just doing my thing. So that was it. And then tonight when the kids go to bed or pretend like they're going to bed, but they're really awake, just reading and being mean to each other. I have twins.
They think they're so smart.
There's always noise. But my husband will do his thing and I will just sit and read. And that is my me time because I love to get lost in other worlds. because our world can be so overwhelming at times. And if you just live in it from, day to day, you don't really get to explore and just see what else is out there. And that's what I think books do for us. So I read every night, at least for an hour. That is my me time.
What's gonna come next is, what are you reading? What do you like to read?
I love everything. Well, okay.
Yeah.
I love everything fiction. Nonfiction, it kind of depends on what it is, because I can get bored easily and I don't want to get bored. I want to enjoy. So recently, and I think I shared this with you, I was reading Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers by Jessie Q. Sutanto. And that book is hilarious.
Really?
And I don't know if you got a chance to read it. My sister is now reading it because I recommended it to her. But it's such a cool way to get this peek into Asian culture, if you're not familiar with Asian culture, and think about, just the most crazy story and how these characters in the story just relate to each other. I don't know. I just loved it because it was like a comedy. It was a romance. It was a mystery. It was everything in one. And I did not want to put it down.
Oh, God, I love that feeling. When it comes to finding that feeling of, we could call it escapism, or we could call it going deeper with where we're at, it's music for me. It's reading for you, and it's music. So you found, is it accurate to say, Puja, when we think about what it takes to be you, that you found a profession where you can be yourself?
Yes.
Okay. I appreciate the thoughtfulness of the answer. There was a pause. Yes. So what parts of you feel really expressed in your profession? And tell us about your love of music and what music means to you.
So I have a Kleenex in case I get teary-eyed, because telling this always makes me just a little teary-eyed.
Good. I'll be ready too. I love crying.
I think for all of us as humans, there's always something that we go back to because it's home. And for me growing up, that was music. I started singing when I was in 5th grade and playing in clarinet in 4th grade. And no matter what I did, whether it was junior high, high school, college, that was the one constant in my life.
Is it fair to say that it was a constant with a life that was changing a lot?
I think so.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I shared this with you, but my mom is a single mom. My parents got divorced when I was 8. And when you live in a household like that, where one person is giving everything they have to make the family work, well, the kids don't necessarily get all of the same experiences as kids who live in a 2-parent household. So I didn't get to do sports. I didn't get to do all of those after-school activities. But the one thing I could do was music. So that was my thing, because that was my option. And so the more I did it, the more I just fell in love with it. And I realized that that was my lifeline. And, when I got to college, I really thought I wanted to be a doctor. We have all these dreams for ourselves when we're younger, like, this is what I want to be. And you go straight for it in college. And you realize that that sense of fulfillment in the classes that you're taking, it's just not there for you. It was so funny. I had this admittance into med school, and then I said, actually, hold off for a second. Is it okay if I just, defer for a year? Can I just try and go into music school? And they said yes, and I did. And I completely fell in love with music and teaching and realized, this is what makes me happy. This is me.
When you heard all right, sure, go ahead. Is that the voice of your mom, your dad, someone else that was saying, go for music, do it?
I think it was my voice. Mm-hmm. Because as, a child of Asian parents, there's always expectations. And I think it's great for them to have expectations. But sometimes those expectations are narrow because of the experiences that our parents have. Mm-hmm. And the options of being a music teacher, or my sister's an architect, those options don't exist in our parents' minds because those aren't the ones that they grew up with knowing. So it was up to me and then to my sister to kind of break out of this mold of what was expected of us and try something brand new and take these really big risks, because no one else, literally none of my friends are teachers, my family friends. I'm the only one. And if you think about music, oh my God, no one. If you're going to be a teacher, okay, I'll be a math teacher or a science teacher. That makes sense. But what, music? Are you crazy? That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So it was really taking this huge risk of, well, I want to do this for me, and let's see where it takes me. Mm-hmm. and it ended up okay.
You sure did. So you pursue education, right? It is a path, and certainly to be a teacher, you need a degree. It doesn't feel to me like that is, first of all, that there's not much that's linear about your life.
No.
No.
Not at all.
And I know a little bit, but tell me about what happens next. You get your master's degree? Yeah?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I got my undergrad in music, but it wasn't music education. And so there was a wonderful program at Vandercook that I was in that was master's with certification. So 2 years, I did my master's degree and got certified to teach. And then I go off into the world and start.
When we spoke before, you had your mom waiting at home. You were going to drive home and your mom was staying with you at the time. She's still staying with you? She's okay.
No, she went back.
Yeah. What does she think of you now? What does she have to say?
I think she's proud of me
Mm-hmm.
because the kind of person she is just someone who strives for excellence. You know, she strives for more, strives to be better. And with the things that I've done with my career, I think she can see that I strive for the same thing. So I think she sees a little bit of me in herself. At least I hope she does, because she's, such a great role model. Despite all the twists and turns of my life, like eventually I got to a place where I could show her, yes, this is what I accomplished,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Speak to excellence, what that means to you in your day-to-day. Because if we're going to talk about navigating boundaries, here's what comes up for me. How do you do that excellently? Or can you be excellent and have boundaries? When I think excellence, I think expansiveness and like, you're doing it all. But that's not the case, right? How do you put the two together? Excellence and having boundaries.
Well, in our previous conversation, we talked about values just a little bit. I think the first part is just identifying what your values are. And as I mentioned to you, like my values are my children, my family, mm-hmm. and my students. Those are really big to me. Yes, you can achieve excellence if when you are in the moment, you are doing your best and you are not letting other things invade your mind. And I think that's what excellence is, because it's being there and giving it your all. Mm-hmm. And it's not about comparing yourself to somebody else. It's about comparing yourself to yourself. And saying, well, this is where I was yesterday. Look what I accomplished today. Because no one is ever going to be perfect. And believe me, I've tried. Perfection does not exist.
You too? Oh.
It'll just drive you crazy, But like, if you can strive for excellence and just being everything that you can be to the people you are with in that moment, then you are excellent. You can be an excellent friend. You can be an excellent listener, an excellent spouse, because you are just there.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite quotes is a J.D. McClatchy quote. Love is the quality of attention you pay to something.
Yeah.
And what I hear in what you're saying is presence. In order to have that state of being and to be in that quality of excellence for your family and for your students, you're saying yes to that. No doubt you've had to say no in other things. I know there's a job change in your past. I know that you've had a health journey. I know that you've learned a lot about what you can and can't handle. So tell me about what you've had to say no to be excellent in the ways you want to be.
Well, when I first started teaching, like most teachers, I kind of just put everything into it. I wasn't married yet. Like that was my life. Eating, breathing, sleeping, teaching. Like that was it for me. I started realizing after, I got married that I couldn't give it all of my time. Like that just didn't make sense, because what about going on vacation? What about dinners? What about all of these other things that you want to do? And so I started realizing, okay, this is a problem. Mm-hmm. And I think the biggest light bulb for me was when I had my kids, because I've always wanted to be a parent. Like that was always like in the back of my mind. And then I realized, well, I'm a parent, but I'm spending more time at school than I am with my own kids. And that is not okay with me. That does not align with my core values. Mm-hmm. I loved my job, built it up, and we did so many things. And it was such an exciting position to be in. But I knew that I could no longer be excellent in that position and also be there for my family. So that was kind of like this moment where I made this huge realization and had to step back and think, okay, well, then what do? I still love teaching. I found a new job that would allow me more time with my kids. So far that's worked out, but that was a boundary that was really hard for me to set, because I was teaching in this wonderful community of people, mm-hmm. where I had connections with staff and family and kids. And it was just such a wonderful place to be. And I had to say no to that. I had to say goodbye. But that was necessary in order to be what I wanted to be for my family.
I think what I hear you saying is something that I really believe, which is, living within your values. This isn't easy. It's not like
No.
I know my values and now I coast, right? It actually, in the moments it matters. I mean, it sounds like there was probably a lot of feelings, right? Like grief, shame, having to make these choices and ultimately choosing what you did. How do you feel about the choice you made?
At first I felt regretful. I felt like I'd let people down. I hate feeling that way. I never want to let anybody down. So that first year was really, really hard, like just coming to terms with I lost something so important to me, but I know I did it for a good reason. And that's a hard place to be. And then, you get further into the job and you start to realize, okay, no, I love this. I can do this. This is a good move for us. This is what we needed to do. It took some time, but I finally got there and realized, okay, this was the right decision.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like what carried you through, because this is not, days or weeks that we're talking about. I know this was a protracted amount of time, is the only thing sounds like is that you knew that you were choosing your family.
Yeah.
And so come what may, right? I mean, the pits of despair, it's like, well, I guess I'll have to keep going. I hear that in you. Yeah.
And sometimes you just have to see things through. And that's what we were talking about. It's the process. You can't just start a new job and expect to be fantastic. No, it's going to take some time to settle in. And if you don't give it that chance and that time to grow, reflect, analyze, then you're never going to get to the end of that where things are good.
Puja's choice for today's spotlight is on Lyric Opera of Chicago. Founded in 1954, they are one of the leading opera companies in the country, and they truly are a must visit. I went to see West Side Story there a few years ago, and their interpretation of such an incredible tale was truly memorable. To learn more, go to lyricopera.org. And now, back to the show. I have a couple friends that are teachers, born and raised in a house of teachers. When we talk about the profession in leadership circles, they're known for being overtaxed, overwhelmed, overburdened, overworked. Am I getting that right?
Yes.
It's occurring to me that I don't know that it's any harder to set boundaries for a teacher, but maybe it is. Can you tell us just about your experience of the profession and the preservation of self?
It is so hard to set boundaries as a teacher because everything that happens during your day just comes home with you. If you had a bad class in the morning, that sticks with you through the day. And I truly feel that we as humans feel those things. So I feel it in my bones when I have a bad day at work. It's not it's just a mental thing. It's a physical thing for me. That's really hard to just separate from when you're in those places. And, you mentioned earlier, I had a health journey too. A couple years ago, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. And that's what my mom has that too. And so I know what that's like from being a child with a parent who has that. I know what it does to your body. And I know for myself that when my stress level gets high, bad things happen to my body. For example, when I was 25, I got shingles as a 25-year-old. Isn't that crazy? Who gets shingles at 25? I did.
Mm-hmm.
I put everything into it. And then I just let my stress levels just rise so high that my body cannot handle it any longer. And it's telling me to stop. And so that was my moment where I was like, okay, things have to change. I have to start saying no. And I can't just say yes to everything that someone's asking me to do. That's where I feel like setting boundaries finally started to kind of permeate into my life because I'm not good at setting boundaries. I just say yes all the time because I want to be there for people. I want to help. I want to do my part. I started setting boundaries, and that's why I exercise every single morning. If I go for a walk, I go to my class, I have to exercise because one, it sets me in a great mood and also gets those endorphins going. But that's my me time.
Yeah.
So it happens every day.
Yeah.
With my students, I have this ritual where when I go to work, I listen to podcasts or I listen to music just to kind of like get into work mode. And then once I'm at work, that's where my head is at. During my plan periods, I am working really, really hard to grade papers, give feedback, talk with colleagues about specific things. I don't sit there and do nothing. Every moment is accounted for. And then when the day is over and I'm driving home, I listen to podcasts, I listen to music, and like that's my moment to disengage. So it's like I've got this ritual so that I can make the most of my time wherever I'm at, but also set those boundaries. And then when I come home, like, okay, it's kid time. It's family time.
Yeah. It sounds like you're also building the muscle of what it means to have someone be disappointed. I mean, no is a rejection fundamentally. Brings me right back to being like 13, Jesus. And it happens, right? It's like the reason why we say yes is to save that discomfort. I'll just take it on. I don't want you to feel it.
Yeah.
So can you tell me about, as you navigate the world with students and your family as values, maybe a recent example of having to set a boundary that was unpopular and how you're living with it?
I think some boundaries that I have set recently are the things that I involve myself with in terms of like experiences I want to give my students. There are so many wonderful things that you can do, so many wonderful field trips and partnerships and things that you can be part of as a teacher, and especially in the music world. And sometimes it's easy to just get caught up and say, yes, okay, let's do it. But then I think about the time it's going to take outside of my already existing responsibilities and if I can do that. And, this year there was something I really wanted to do for my students. I thought that'd be a great experience, but I decided against it, at least for this year, until I have some more time to be able to give to that. I want that for them, but I also want for them to have a teacher who is fully there and able to be there and be present versus someone who's so stressed out that they can't even enjoy teaching. Yeah. I think there's a difference there. Like, back to high school, which teachers were there who loved it and others who were just not loving their profession. And like, I don't want to be that second person. I want to be there and I want the excitement to always be there on my face because that's what my students need from me.
Yeah, that engagement. Before I forget, I just recovered from shingles like a month ago. So
it's the worst.
I hear ya. Oh my God, it's so awful. I would love to say to listeners, don't get shingles, but good luck. If you're over 50, you can get a vaccine. I want to go back a couple thoughts ago when you were talking about having a bad day. It feels to me like a bad day for Puja would be not being able to focus, not being able to be present for whatever reason, right? Life, welcome to life.
Yeah.
But as you reflect on it just in this moment and maybe you think back to a bad day, what is a bad day? What was a bad day?
A bad day is when I cannot engage my students.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the thing is, I teach a content area where you have to be engaged.
Yeah.
Being in choir is like being on a team. If one person messes up, everybody feels it, right? Like we're all a part of this together. And when, I've got 5 kids out of maybe 30 that just aren't in it that day and are not giving it their 100%, and I can't win them over that day, then I feel like I failed.
Yeah.
And I know it's not, I know it's not my fault. Like I get it. We all have bad days. And unfortunately, like when you walk into a room, like that just comes in with you. But my quote to my students is always like, leave your baggage at the door. You're in here, enjoy where you are, because that's what I try to do when I'm at school. I want them to try to do the same thing because that's a life skill. You need to learn how to be there, be present.
Yes.
And so that's always my goal. Like I can see the engagement when I see the eyebrows go up. I see the smiles. I see great vowel shapes because we're singing, like all of these things. When I see it, I know that it's a good day. And when I can't achieve that, it's rough. It's rough to recover from because immediately after that class is over, it's like, okay, what happened? How do I fix it for tomorrow? What's a new strategy I can use? Like I go completely into fix-it mode because I want to make the next day better.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever pull a student aside that's disengaged and get curious about what is going on?
All the time.
There? Yeah.
Every day. Because when they walk into the room, like I can just see it on their face.
Yeah.
And so I'll get the class working on something and I'll pull them aside and say, hey, what's going on? Are you doing okay today? And it could be after they've like had kind of a disruptive time in class, or it could be just when they walk in, I just see like they're down. We're human first. We're not educators, students. That's not our primary persona. We're human. And so, yeah, we can all have really awful days. Sometimes it just helps when somebody sees that in you and addresses it, because then they know and they're trying to connect with you. So, yes. And I give them options. I say, hey, you want to hang out in the hallway for a few minutes until you're ready to come back in? Do you want to talk to someone for a few minutes? What do you need to do for yourself? And then when they're ready, they'll come back. And I think that's the really important part about connecting with students and building that trust, because if you see that and you address it that way, well, you've developed a relationship.
Yeah. I want to just I feel like give you a standing ovation, because I'm actually, as you're talking, picturing sort of an analogous experience in a corporate retreat center. Okay. So just this, it's adults. As a facilitator, I have a similar experience. It's so funny. My folks were like, don't be a teacher. And I'm like, I'm not. And they're like, you're kind of like a teacher. Okay. When I see someone who's disengaged, I cannot not ask.
Yeah.
It's a little different, right? It's maybe not like, but why is it different? And I think about CEOs and the vulnerability it takes in senior leaders in organizations to say like, how you doing? I noticed, right? I think some people be like, well, I have boundaries. Leave your shit at the door and don't bring that stuff in here. And like, is it that, or is it an unwillingness to engage? Like, what would you say to people who might struggle to ask that question? How you doing?
I think it takes a level of empathy to do that. You have to want it. You have to know what that feels like and recognize that in somebody else. It's also a bit of vulnerability, You have to be able to ask what's going on and to be able to share in that person's emotions at that time. And sometimes it's hard for people to do that. And it's just so easy to say, okay, well, they'll feel better tomorrow. Let's move on. But is that really doing them a service? Like, is that really being there for that person? And treating them like a human versus employee?
Yeah, I mean, you gotta lead with the humanity of it all first, which is, like you said, really vulnerable. When you think about, I think you've said this in so many words, but let's just circle back to it. When it comes to setting boundaries in the workplace, and to be clear, boundaries are for you so that you get to be you. Puja, just in case you're listening, doesn't have boundaries for me. Puja has boundaries for herself.
Yes.
Like, what is the key to setting healthy boundaries in the workplace? Let's break that down. So, healthy boundaries. Do you have a sense of what that means for you? It sounds like values aligned is one
Values
thing.
are aligned,
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
Work should be a place where you can be happy. I know.
Ugh.
Wouldn't that be wonderful if you were just always happy at work?
That's my dream. That's my dream, that you can be like, it adds to your life. It's additive.
Yes, it's adding to your life.
That's my dream.
And so I try to say yes to the things that fuel that sense of happiness. So if there's like a team that I want to be on, a cohort that I want to be in, I know that that's going to bring me some joy, and it's going to bring me this. And I learning is just always part of what we do as teachers. We never stop learning. So like, it's going to bring me that learning experience that I want.
Yeah.
And that's when I know that's a boundary that I don't need to set. Like, that's something I want for myself. But when I see that it's something that is going to bring me frustration, it's unnecessary in my life, and it's going to put me in a place where I'm not going to be excellent, or I'm not going to be that person who I want to be, then that's where I'm like, okay, this may not be the thing that I want to say yes to. It's kind of like trying to see where would I be 10 weeks into this thing that I'm saying yes to?
Yeah.
Is it going to be putting me in a good place, or is this something that's just going to frustrate me and make me feel like, why did I do this?
Right. Okay. How about this? And now I'm thinking about power. I'm thinking about parents. I'm thinking about superintendents and principals. I think where it gets tricky for me is when like it's a client for me, so my livelihood depends on this relationship. How do you ride the wave of setting boundaries there? Because I think that's where it gets really sticky for people. The stakes maybe feel higher. Do you have any experience with that? What that's been like for you?
I do. Yeah. Last year I stepped down from something that I was a part of for a long time. And it was because I started to feel really overwhelmed. As I said, I've got this autoimmune thing. I could feel in my body what was happening. And I knew that if I didn't stop, it would be very hard for me to not cause damage to my body. Because once the damage is there, it's there. So I had to say no. And that was really hard. Like, I can't tell you how long it took me to just come up with the words for that email. Because I did it in an email, of course. Because if I do it in person, like, I'll go back and say yes. You know what I mean? Like, that's just how I work. And so it took me like days to write this email, to like compose the message that I wanted to say, where I was like, I'm so sorry that I have to step down, but this is why. I hope you understand where I'm coming from. I feel like it was more on my end, like all of that pressure that I was putting on myself to do this and say no, because the response was like, we understand and it's okay.
Yeah.
But I feel like for us, it's harder for us to say no than for somebody to accept the no, because we don't want to let people down. Mm-hmm. And so that pressure just builds and builds and builds until we either say no or we just keep going along with it until it becomes too much.
Mm-hmm. It's coming up for me. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but just thinking about, on the one hand, I hate this word. On the other hand, it's perfect. I think about how you're talking and I think about the value of wellness or health or wholeness, or maybe it's authenticity. Because when you said I felt it in my body, I'm literally imagining a client right now. She's a chief marketing officer. She has to say no to something. It has high stakes, like 6-figure high stakes. Part of what we're working on is helping her feel it in her body, right? Like the thing. Because I don't know if you've had this experience as a woman or just as a person, just as you, of like disconnecting from that and pushing anyway, right? Like we push through.
Oh my gosh.
What we do.
That's my life. Oh my gosh.
So it sounds like, is it fair to say you didn't listen to your body until it was screaming at you? Because that's my experience.
Oh,
okay,
totally.
Good. Yeah.
Totally. Oh my gosh. Because I started my new job and like, I was like, yes, 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 yes. And of course it's like, yeah, I'll sleep later. I'll eat later. And this is the saddest thing, but we prioritize ourselves last. We always prioritize ourselves last. Mm-hmm. And that's not okay. Mm-hmm. And yes, it took a health scare, but I think it also took age. I just turned 40. Like, I know now that it's okay to say no. If I was 35, I would say yes. But like at this point in my life, I know what I want and I know who I am. And I am happy with that. And I don't need to prove that to anybody else but myself.
I love the thought that if you have to change who you are, you need to change where you are.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you've found a place to root. Like this high school you're rooted at. Do you want to shout out your high school, by the way?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, let's do
high school.
Go. So tell us about like, what's your mascot?
The Wildcats.
Go Wildcats. Lakeview High School. It sounds like it's true that you can be who you are there. What makes that possible?
I feel like the people that I work with are just fantastic. There's just a lot of love in that building. And I love my students. I love this space. It's a place that I feel like I'm at home at. And that's really important because you spend a lot of time at work. It should feel like home. It should be comfortable. So I'm just really happy there. And I feel this sense of, I can try new things and people will support me in trying these new things. And I've got a great team.
There's a lot of people who don't feel connected to the people they work with. And in my parlance, that means like you don't feel like you can be courageous at work.
Yeah.
Have you had that experience? And do you have a thought on, well, then what do I do now if that's the case for me?
I am very fortunate that I have not had that experience. I've been really lucky with the places that I've worked at. When you don't have that, you have to find a community somewhere. And maybe it's not the people at your particular place of work, but maybe somewhere else, who do the same thing that you do. Finding a Facebook group, finding a gym, or someplace else where you can find people who think like you do and can give you that connection that you need that you don't get at work. We're social beings. We need that to boost our own morale. You can't always do it by yourself.
For sure. I want to go back to this thing you said so good about the skill of leaving it at the door.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk in our generation about bringing yourself to work. Like we just said, who you are should be welcome in the workplace. When you say leave things at the door, and when you say that that's a skill, say more about it. What do you mean?
We have so many experiences every day, right? You have the experience of waking up, having breakfast, talking with your family, whatever it is. You have all these experiences that pile on throughout the day. When you're in a space where you have to be completely on, those experiences kind of need to take a back seat. Say you had an argument with somebody earlier in the day and then you're teaching a class. Well, I can't go into that class with that argument in the front of my brain. That has to take a back seat so that I can be there 100% for who I'm with at that moment. And I think for students, like I'm saying, it's a life skill because you can't always be in your feelings, it's just not possible. Be crying all day long. And I don't think
so true.
I don't think that the answer is to compartmentalize, but I think the answer is to be present.
Yeah.
To be there in the here and now so that you don't miss out on these experiences that could help lift that mood or that could help you find a solution to the problem that you had earlier in the day. Because if you're completely in that problem, you're not able to open your mind to anything else because you're just so stuck. You have those blinders on. So leaving your baggage at the door just means, okay, let go of it for now and come back to it later when you're ready to handle it.
Yeah. It occurs to me that that's like a self-boundary, right? Like the boundary I have with this big thing right now, if it affects my ability to show up, I'm going to say no right now. Not yet. Not right now. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that I get it, Puja. Like that is a huge skill I've had to learn as an adult.
It's really hard.
I know.
You don't just learn the skill. It's not like there forever. Like you have to keep relearning the skill, right? But like once you started to put that into your practice, I just feel like you're happier because you're actually living. You're not stuck in your head all the time, but you're living, you're experiencing, you're connecting. And that's what life is about.
Is it also fair to say then as we close, that's what boundaries are for? Is it to protect? Yes. Is it to keep you safe? Sure. Are they preventative? I guess. Ultimately, shouldn't they also facilitate joy?
Yeah, of course.
So get with this boundaries game. Come on,
I feel
right?
like boundaries have such a negative connotation, but I see them as a really positive thing.
Me too.
Because that's where you are setting expectations for your life, for yourself, for other people. And that's where you're creating spaces in your life to feel certain things or be certain things. When I go to school, that's my space to be the teacher. When I'm at home, that's my space to be a member of my family. When I'm out of the house on my walk, that's my space to be me. And giving yourself those spaces in your life creates balance and keeps you healthy.
Yeah. I want to hear from everyone who listens to this. Like, what is the boundary you're going to set for yourself today? Let's get excited. Because that's a whole new way to think about it, I think.
It's a good thing.
Yeah. Puja, is there anything that feels unsaid that you want?
Well, I'm sad I didn't get to ask you any questions because I feel like you asked all of them.
Yeah, I did. But true.
Here's a question for you. What boundary do you think you want to set for yourself? Thinking about your own life.
Yeah, that's a great one. Thank you. I am working actively, setting a boundary around helping, getting connected to, is this for me? Is this for you? Getting connected to my intentions. So my boundary is like, not yet. I'll let you know. Maybe. Like that's what it sounds like. And it's never clear. Here's the thing, right? Like sometimes it is clear. Sometimes you're like, whoa, right between the eyes, what you should do or what it is. And you talked a lot about this. How I'm wired, and this is important, is like I need a little space to say, to think and to evaluate because my instinct is to go toward the problem. Right. So the boundary for me is like, I don't say yes. I sleep on everything at least one night, even like buying a new pair of pants, right? Like I pause. So that's something I'm really working on. Thank you for asking. That's one that it's still hard for me.
You're building in that wait time.
The analytical piece. Yeah. That's my life's, I'm sure, going to be my life's work in a lot of ways. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Oh,
this was wonderful. I loved it.
I loved it too. I'm sad it's over. I'm like, wait a minute, what? Christina's like 10-minute warning. And I'm like, absolutely not. That's not. That can't be the case. I've got more to say. All right, listeners, we did it. Another episode. Inspired. If you liked it, subscribe. And if you want even more content, you can follow us on Instagram or TikTok at Who's Missing Podcast, or check out our website, who'smissingpodcast.com. Talk to you soon, friends.